strong is Minecraft Steve? What is the limit of his strength? Is there a limit at all? These questions will be answered in this video and more. Make sure to subscribe for more of these kind of videos where I go into Minecraft theories. This is the first theory video that I'm making, and I don't know how common this would be on my channel, but Minecraft Steve's strength can be described in many words, but I think the best way to describe it is superhuman. This is very clear when you see Steve walking around with diamond armor, which probably weighs so much that not even the best weightlifters of this time could even bear carrying that many diamonds at once, let alone have a full stack of diamonds in their inventory. That brings up the question, how strong is Steve? I have created 3 different ways to interpret Steve's strength. They have their flaws, they have their bright spots, but most importantly, this is a video game. Take everything with a grain of salt because this is what I think. This is a hard thing to really wrap your head around because obviously it's video game mechanics. First way to interpret Steve's strength is how much stuff can he carry and how heavy that stuff is. The heaviest known block is the netherite block. Granted, we don't know how heavy netherite scraps will be, but we do know how heavy gold is. Anyways, I'll admit, I did have to look online for some help regarding this because the calculation for this is kind of insane. The new heaviest block is the netherite block, with a gold block weighing 19.3 metric tons, or 42,549 pounds. This means that each gold ingot weighs a whopping 2.1 metric tons, or 4,717 pounds. And since each netherite ingot uses 4 gold ingots, the weight for a netherite ingot is 8.58 metric tons, or 18,915 pounds. Finally, a netherite block is 9 netherite ingots, so the total weight for a netherite block is a fascinating 77.2 metric tons, or 170,196 pounds, or 77,000 kilograms. Alright, and just to clarify, I did check the math here, and the math does seem to add up. If this is the weight of one netherite block, obviously in Minecraft, we have a thing called a shulker box. A shulker box can carry up to 27 stacks of items. Let's say that we have 64 netherite blocks in each of these slots. We can put 37 of these in our inventory because, one, we have to include the offhand, and also we can shove in 36 other shulker boxes within our inventories filled to the brim with stacks of netherite blocks. With all that said and done, plus the netherite armor that you would wear, the weight total would sum up something like this. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to calculate this through metric tons. So, if one netherite block is 77.2 metric tons, as the blog post said, we multiply that to a stack, which is 64, and then we also multiply that by 27, because that's how many shulker slots there are, and then we multiply this by the amount of slots that you can hold a block, which is 37, plus we need to add in the 24 ingots used to make armor, and multiply that number by 8.58 because 8.58 is how much a netherite ingot weighs in metric tons, and this number comes just short of 5 million in metric ton strength. To put that in perspective, a Boeing 747A passenger airline weighs 442 metric tons. You're telling me that Steve could possibly bench 11,000 Boeing at a time? And I would like to remind you, we don't know how much netherite scrap weighs. Therefore, this weight is not even close to how much Steve can actually carry. If Steve has this unlimited strength, not to mention the fact that he can run around freely despite the fact that he's carrying so much weight, there has to be a catch, right? There's no way that Steve can actually be this strong. The main problem that really arises when comparing Steve's inventory to his actual strength is that it's really hard to gauge how much is that inventory really affecting how much he is actually lifting? This will be explored more in the third theory, but let's go over to the second theory first. And the second theory is that his strength is infinite. The first theory can easily be debunked by the second theory because there obviously is no limit to what he can possibly carry, assuming that we're still taking into account that the inventory is a part of his strength. But even having Steve's strength branded as infinite is also a huge stretch because Steve can still take damage, Steve can't one-shot things, and also, Steve cannot mine bedrock. Bedrock is the one material that, regardless of whatever Steve tries to do, he cannot mine it, at least without the use of cheats. The significance of bedrock and the entire existence of bedrock, in fact, debunks theory number 2, mainly because if he cannot destroy a block within the game, that means that his strength does have a limit. The only possible explanation that people would have is that he cannot find a material stronger than diamond to make a pickaxe out of. The fact that his strength is infinite means that he should be able to break it regardless of whatever tool he has. And the whole concept of an infinite strength should entail that his durability would also follow suit, yet the zombies do more damage to him without any armor or weapons than he does to it. Theory 1 and Theory 2 seemingly have so many faults to it that there is no way of really saying how strong Steve truly is, because all of these feats that he's doing can be vastly overshadowed by his actions, because his actions clearly represent someone of a slightly weaker strength status than carrying 5 million metric tons worth of items. And here's where Theory 3 really shines in for me. Theory 3 is that if Steve's strength has a finite number, the inventory is definitely not a part of Steve's strength or what he's lifting. In the game, there are people known as Endermen. Endermen can pick up blocks, carry blocks, and no matter what block they pick up, no matter how they pick it up, they still walk the exact same way, and nothing is slowed or changed about them regarding when they pick up a block or when they don't have a block at all. The movement speed is the same, and they still act the same. What this could possibly mean is that Endermen might have something where they store it in their own personal ender chest. By a personal ender chest, I don't mean like an actual physical chest, but almost like no matter what items go into your pocket, it's stored in your own personal void, known as the inventory menu. This would explain so much, because what if Steve is one of the few people within the world, including Alex, who could possibly get the same kind of result where they have their own personal inventory, and it is treated similar to like a personal chest or a personal e-chest on their character. Obviously, this is a video game, and what I'm saying is entirely on a false lore that I've forged up. The thought of it is kind of fascinating. And one key thing that people might not realize, the game rule for keep inventory might be a key indication of this theory. The way that keep inventory works, let's say you enable a keep inventory. When you disable it, your items just pop out of you like a piñata. But when you have keep inventory on, the matter of the items along with your entire corpse dissipates to your nearby spawn point. What this could possibly mean is that when you have keep inventory on, this personal void known as your inventory acts like an e-chest rather than a regular chest. People might be wondering, why isn't it as simple as, oh, Steve just carries his own personal chest? The problem with that theory is that would still mean that there's some weight to be carried, because if it's a physical chest, then he's going to use his physical strength to lift up the chest. So how can we possibly measure how strong Steve is? I have 2 ways that would be a perfect match to see how strong Steve is, to compare feats from some very strange human studies and some world records that were done within the Olympics, and compare that to whatever Steve could possibly do against that. One of them is more of a durability test, while the other one is more of a strength test. So the first test is how far can Steve fall without dying? And the answer to this is 23 blocks. Why is this important? 1 block is equivalent to that of 1 meter, and we can compare this information to studies regarding how far can a person fall without dying. On this Forbes article page, it says here that people usually survive falls from a height of 20 to 25 feet, which is between 6 to 8 meters. But above that, things get very deadly very fast. A study done in Paris in 2005 looked at 287 victims of falls and found that falls from 8 stories, 30 meters, or higher were 100% fatal. That means that people probably have survived between the range of 24 to 29 meters, which accurately puts Steve at a reasonable place. What he did is still superhuman to an extent because 23 meters is no joyride. But the fact that he survives from a very high place and the fact that we don't know the circumstances of the victims of fall, this in itself is pretty superhuman because Steve could probably land on any surface from that height and be perfectly fine. And with hay bales, he can survive from 100 meters down. Anyways, moving on to the second test. The next test is arguably something even simpler. We're going to compare Steve throwing a trident to some of the greatest javelin throws, aka the farthest javelin throw in the Olympic sports. It's as simple as looking it up online and knowing that the legendary Czech athlete Jan Zelezny, a 3-time world and Olympic champion, holds the men's javelin throw world record courtesy of a massive 98.48 throw that he registered in 1996 during an athletics meet in Germany. It says here that Steve can throw a trident 80 blocks away. And if Steve is at a certain elevation, the trident can even go up to 115 blocks. So it actually takes into account of how high up are you. Similar to if you're in, let's say, Denver, Colorado throwing a football, that is definitely going to zip more into the air than if you were on a lower elevation level. This means that Steve is definitely capable of throwing the same amount of distance as Zelezny, but it's realistic enough to say that Steve is definitely human and Steve is definitely at a much more reasonable strength than what we originally thought he was. In conclusion, Steve is not as strong as we may have thought he was. However, he is still pretty strong as any athlete in the world, and he is definitely one of